I have just chaired a meeting of the Cabinet where we agreed that the government should call a general election to be held on the 8th of June.
Theresa May has proved herself to be not just a dishonest politician, but a serially dishonest politician. She's not someone whose word you can trust ever again. Nothing she says in this general election campaign, not one promise, not one pledge, can you trust because of her track record of saying she'll do one thing and then doing another. Just a few weeks ago, one of her spokespeople said, there isn't going to be one, it isn't going to happen, there is not going to be a general election. So what's changed? Theresa May claims the opposition are going to obstruct Brexit. What a brazen lie. Total dishonesty, isn't it? Because already we've seen, and Labour have upset some very passionate Remainers who felt they should have fought against Article 50 and all the rest, but Labour said, no, we're going to respect the will of the British people, we're going to respect the referendum result, and we're not going to vote against Article 50. Many people were very angry and upset about it, but that is what they did. So what evidence does she have of an opposition seeking to subvert the will of the British people? She has none. She was the one, Theresa May, who supported Remain, and then didn't just reinvent herself as a Brexiteer, but as a hardcore Brexiteer. She adopted that position, again, for naked partisan reasons. She was the one who allowed her chancellor to go back on a cast iron Conservative pledge on national insurance made at the last general election. Now, blaming Philip Hammond for that. Sorry, how does leadership work? What, Theresa May, she has no say over the budget of her own Chancellor of the Exchequer. She knew what he was going to do and she agreed to it. Either that or she's completely and utterly incompetent. She only reversed that betrayal because she realised she won't get it through Parliament. Her majority was too small. When she has an even bigger majority, what do you think is going to happen to her pledges and her promises and her commitments? She said now wasn't the time for a Scottish independence referendum, all the instability it would cause. So, hold on a minute, where does that leave holding a general election? I'm not going to sit here and be dishonest about the situation that Labour now faces. Labour's polling is very, very bad. It will take an unprecedented general election campaign to turn around that polling and stop a calamitous Tory victory with a huge majority, with all the terrible damage that that will inflict on this country of ours. I'll only do this briefly, because it would be odd if I didn't mention it. It was my view, which upset some of you, that...
Quick question about the leadership.
Jeremy should have stood down for another candidate to take his policies forward. But we are where we are. The Labour leadership obviously made their choice, and now we've just got to unite. We've got to do our best. We've got to take everything we have and throw it at this Conservative government. 48% of this country, when they went to the polls last June, made a decision that they felt that the future of this country would be more secure in the European Union. Now they lost. We lost. I lost. I campaigned for that. We lost. But that 48% have been completely written out of the future of this country. They've been treated with absolute contempt, as though they didn't matter. They don't matter at all. That 48% of people have the right to have a say over the future of their own country. Not to be demonised and disparaged and ignored, but to be listened to. If the Tories win a huge majority, as the polling currently suggests, then we'll have a chaotic, ruinous Brexit that will be damaging to jobs, the economy, and living standards. Those 48% of people will be completely and utterly disregarded, and we won't have a deal that puts jobs, the economy, and living standards first. Now, some of you, I know, are tempted to vote for the Liberal Democrats. Don't vote for the Lib Dems, whatever you do in the coming weeks. Because the Lib Dems, remember, are the most dishonest, disingenuous political party in modern British history. They propped up the Conservative government for all those years, with all the cuts and all the rest. They made people feel betrayed about politics and that lack of trust that they helped fuel. And we would not be in this situation now that this country is currently in without all those things that the Lib Dems did in those 5 years. They brought this country to this very moment. Tim Farron is on record recommitting his party to coalition with the Conservative Party. Tim Farron, a man who sided with Donald Trump as soon as he started firing missiles at Syria. Everything that Tim Farron says, even more than Theresa May, is literally up for negotiation. Labour have done a raft of new policies recently. Free primary school meals for all, funded by putting VAT on private school fees. Increasing the top rate of tax on those at the top when all these cuts are being implemented in this country. A £10 an hour minimum wage. A crackdown on late payments to small businesses. We could go on. We learned from the last general election that a series of policies which are popular in the polls, that's not enough to win a general election. If you just throw them out into the ether, you've got to have a clear vision that brings them all together. Labour privately briefed that what brings together a lot of their policies is standing up for the 99% against the 1%. That's not something which is going to catch on in those terms. You need a clear phrase, Labour needs a clear phrase that sums up that sentiment. That this is what we're doing, we're fighting for you, the people out there, in a country which is so rigged in favour of this tiny elite, where life is becoming, for so many of you, harder and more insecure. We're going to change that. We're going to give you that security. Labour has to forge a coalition. That includes people in the middle, as well as those low-paid people for whom life has got so much harder in the last few months even. Here's a message, beyond the message, this is me pleading to people who join the Labour Party. All of us have to go knocking on those doors. We have to go to seats which we're in danger of losing and marginal seats and all the rest and knock on doors. Every single door in this country, knock on them. What we have to have is the biggest get out the vote operation that this country has ever seen. That means on election day we know where Labour voters are and we can get them to come out and vote. This is about the future of this country. It's about the future of your country. It's about the future of your children. We have a choice. Do we build a society run in the interests of the majority, or one rigged in favour of a tiny elite? Do we have a country which is bitterly divided, where millions of people who voted with good conscience and good faith last June are disregarded, are demonised and disparaged, and are left with no say over the future of this country? Or do we have a deal that can unite the great majority of this country, where we honour the referendum result without having a deal which is ruinous for jobs, living standards and the economy? Do we stick with a Prime Minister whose word you cannot trust, who makes commitments that she breaks? Whatever she says during this campaign, none of it can be trusted. I don't think most people in this country want us to end as some isolated tax haven, with its social provision gutted, with Scotland so disillusioned with what this country has become that we end up with the dismantling of our own nation. None of that has to happen. We can build a different sort of society. A society run in the interests of the majority, not those tiny elites. Where all of us can prosper. Where we don't have this constant fall in living standards, but where prosperity is properly distributed among the people of this nation. It's not going to be easy. But all of us now, whatever cliches you want to use, all hands on deck, this is the fight of our life. So please, in the coming weeks, whatever happens, whatever is thrown at Labour, and all the rest, go out there and fight. Get the message across. All of us have to be leaders now. And the future of this country may well be decided by what many of you watching this video choose to do.